Hello, I've got something a little different for you all this week. Rather than the usual marbling demos, I thought I'd make some videos showing how to get everything ready for marbling. First up, how to apply alum to the paper. One of the most important steps is mark the back of your paper. You probably won't be able to tell what side of the paper has the alum on it once it dries, so it's very important to mark which side is the back before you start. The alum works as a mordant to stick the paint to the paper. Without it, your beautiful marbling will wash away and you will be sad. I spray the alum solution across the paper, then take a sea sponge and spread it evenly over the whole surface. When I first start, I usually wet out my sponge as well, so I'm not trying to spread the moisture with a completely dry sponge. Once I've done a few papers, the sponge is usually wet enough that I don't need to keep doing this. It doesn't take a lot of alum. The goal is not to soak the paper, just to make sure the whole surface has been coated. I then place the paper between 2 sheets of blotting paper to dry. I continue to stack the allumed paper between layers of blotting paper till I have all the paper I want, or I run out of blotting paper. You can use pretty much any paper you want, but there are some qualities that make it easier for marbling. You want something strong but also lightweight enough to have a good drape to it, and ideally something that doesn't expand too much when wet. The more drape the paper has, the easier it will be to lay onto the bath without unwanted bubbles or lines. I'd avoid anything too stiff, especially if you're just starting out. Any text weight paper is good, something comparable to your standard copy paper. If you want to do something heavier, something more like cardstock, you definitely can, but it might take a little more practice to get the hang of it. My absolute favorite paper for marbling was Texoprint, but it's unfortunately been discontinued by the manufacturer. I used to get it from marbleart.us, but the paper they found to replace it, Munising 30 pound, is really excellent for marbling as well. I preferred how Texoprint was a little thinner, but otherwise it's just as good. It's smooth, has a fantastic drape to it, very easy to use. But most importantly, it is incredibly strong when wet. Most paper tears very easily when wet, so you have to be careful after picking it up off the bath, especially if you hang it to dry like I do. But I've never had the Munising tear on me. But with a little care, any paper will work. And you don't have to use only white paper. Colored paper works great too, though paint that is less opaque might not work on all colors. I especially like using black paper for rich, dark marbling that would be impossible to achieve with just paint on white paper. While I finish up the rest of my paper, I'll explain how I make my alum solution. It's 1 cup of alum per gallon of water. I use hot water from the tap, fill up an old distilled water jug, add the alum, then shake it around for a while to help dissolve the alum. Once the alum is completely dissolved, I pour it into my spray bottle to use. I store the extra in the gallon jug. I don't know if it would go bad at some point, but I've had alum solution last for years stored like this. I've heard some people say you should alum paper immediately prior to use, within a few days or weeks, but I haven't had any trouble with older allumed paper. Once the paper is dry, I store it rolled up in a plastic bag so it doesn't get exposed to much air. I've had alum paper stored like that for over 3 years, and it's worked just like it was allumed yesterday. The alum comes as a powder. You can get it from various suppliers online, specifically for marbling. The package I have says it's also referred to as potassium aluminum sulfate. The alum is safe to touch, but it will really dry out your skin, so you might want to wear gloves like I always forget to do. Once I've finished applying alum to all of my paper, I have a heavy board that I like to put over the top of the stack to let it dry overnight. The weight controls the moisture and keeps the paper from cockling as it dries. The blotting paper can be reused once it's dry. I hope you've enjoyed this more instructional video. Let me know if you have any questions about something I didn't cover. And thanks for watching.